Let's stop for a second and think about the Ukrainian soldier who's got his ass in a trench somewhere on the Ukrainian front lines, and looking around. And I mean, he already knows that the Russian military is corrupt and incompetent, and he already knows that he's been placed there really just as they refer to it as cannon fodder. He's just a body, an expendable body. And the Russian command and control structure is top down, meaning that any decisions that are made in the field by military commanders have to be made by commanders that are well up the chain of command. The Russians don't have any non-commissioned officers in their military. I don't know why, because they're incompetent. They don't know what they're doing. So they don't have any sergeants, they don't have any corporals, they don't have anybody on site in a battle or in the field that can make a decision to react to events that are happening right in front of them. Instead, they've got to kick that, like I said, upstairs. There's no Russian officer that's going to make a decision, because if it goes south on him, then he is at risk of demotion. He's at risk of arrest and detention. He's at risk of execution. This is Russia, friends. Yes, it happens still. It's always happened. It probably always will happen. It's just the nature of the beast. So, if that doesn't handcuff Russian forces to begin with, as I said, Prigozhin had taken Rostov-on-Don, which was the headquarters for the command and control of the Russian military effort in Ukraine. And so now they don't have any connection with headquarters. So the Russian soldier sitting in the trench, he has no idea what's happening behind him in the rear, and he has no idea what's happening in front of him at the front. And so you're sitting there and you're wondering, okay, what's going on here, and why am I sitting here getting prepared to die? The Ukrainians are broadcasting over loudspeakers to the Russians, this is not your fight. What are you doing here? Why did you come here to die? Your problem isn't with us or Kiev. Your problem is your own country, Russia, and the leadership in Moscow. They're the people who dragged you away from your family and stuck you in this muddy trench with no training, inadequate food, inadequate ammunition, and just basically put you in a position where they were going to hang you out to dry. And if you tried to do anything about it, if you tried to withdraw in the face of the enemy, the Russians have barrier troops behind you in a second line whose job it is to mow you down with machine gun fire if you ever get it into your head that things are a little bit tough and you better withdraw. No, sir. There will be no withdrawing from the front line. You're there and you've got one purpose, and that is to lay down your life for the Rodina, or the motherland, and in particular for its leader, Vladimir Putin. So, this has to have a negative effect when Russians see that the chaos that's being caused by Prigozhin in Russia is being not met with anything. And we have to remember too, like about 2 or 3 weeks ago, remember those Russian rebels, I suppose? They were all outfitted by Ukraine with Ukrainian equipment, but they ran across the border and shot the place up at the Russian oblasts that are right across the border from Ukraine. I'm thinking of Belgorod Oblast and Belgorod, the city itself, which is fairly close to the Ukrainian border. So these Russian partisan units, all kitted out in Ukrainian kit or equipment, come across the border, and they're met with absolutely nothing. And any opposition that did rise to the occasion was quickly pushed aside by these guys. And like I said, they sort of shot the place up and they rolled back over the border into Ukraine, leaving the Russians looking stupid and incompetent, and that they can't meet the security requirements of defending their own border. But again, the entire Russian military is in Ukraine. What's left they weren't thinking that anything like this was going to happen from their own people. Vladimir Putin is looking extremely weak as a result of this, and that doesn't sit well with Vladimir at all. Vladimir likes to project himself as a strong man, a virile man, a vital man. Remember, this is a guy who wrestles bears and alligators, you know, without a shirt on. He's just very robust. He's the best hockey player in all of Russia. And if you don't believe me, watch some of the video of this clown playing hockey. I remember there was a video there, I'm digressing here, but he scored 9 goals in this one hockey game. It was just absolutely brilliant. Watch the video of Putin's triple hat trick there, and you'll see what a freaking joke Russia is. And they must think that we're all stupid when we... And they do believe that all Russians are stupid enough to believe this stuff. And you know what? They're not far off the mark. I don't wish to be overly critical of Russians in general, but there's something about these people, in their culture even, where, you know, lying, cheating, murdering, misrepresentation is just like another day. It's just what you do. It's just what's expected. So I don't mean to sound racist against Russians, but they are very frustrating people. They don't understand what democracy is, and even when they have a chance to have it, it's like they've got it in their hands and they're going, "What is this? What do I do with this?" You know, they just can't handle it. And so because they can't handle it, they're so used to having a strong man leading them, even if that man is repressive and an autocrat and a kleptocrat that's stealing from them blindly and is directly responsible for their less than perfect quality of life. Even with all of that, they're prepared to pay that price, so long as they've got a strong man to protect them. What they need is somebody to protect them from the strong man, but they just haven't you know, scraped together the brain cells to figure that out just yet. Anyways, my apologies to any of you who may be Russian, but if any of you out there who are Russian, you may not like what I'm saying, but you don't have to reflect too hard to understand that I'm not too far off the mark there. But anyways, so Wagner is now moving back because, you know, the hope for outpouring of support that I guess PRIGOZHIN was hoping for never materialized. So he kind of went, okay, we got a problem here. I've sort of hung myself out to dry. I've made it look like I was going to move into Moscow. I've already moved into 2 other major Russian cities. I've already made the Russians look like complete hapless fools. It makes the Russians look like the freaking Keystone Cops, which is a fair comparison in my mind. But anyways, I guess he figured, okay, this isn't going so well, so what am I going to do now? So into the picture marches our savior. And who is that? That is the president of Belarus, Alexander Lukashenko, who is known, well, he's known in Western Europe as the longest serving autocrat or dictator in Europe. I guess you're not really paying attention to Putin over in Russia, but anyways, Lukashenko, that's who he's viewed as. But basically, Lukashenko's claim to fame is that he is so far up Putin's backside that it hurts to say that. But it's true. Lukashenko is basically a puppet of Putin who owes his position in power to Putin, who supported him while the Belarus people, the Belarusians, rose up against Lukashenko back in 2020. And the Russians helped him out, and so he owes them a few favors. He's not that stupid of a guy. He realizes that basically Putin's goal is to incorporate Belarus into Russia itself. And he's sort of trying to, you know, he's smart enough to recognize that and try and sort of not make that happen, because he understands that the moment that happens, he's just a puppet. What he doesn't realize is he's already a puppet. But anyways, I'm going to connect them back to our story here. So in walks Lukashenko, who knows PRIGOZHIN and he knows Putin. So in walks Lukashenko. He knows PRIGOZHIN fairly well. He, of course, knows Putin very well. And so I guess he fancies himself as a middleman here who could offer his services in mediation. Now, mind you, I think probably Putin put him up to it. But nevertheless, whatever the reason, Lukashenko is now the man of the hour. And so as a result of negotiating between the two parties, Putin, by the way, when at the approach of the Wagner mercenaries up Highway M4, Putin was so confident of the ability of his tattered forces to stop Wagner that he bugged out to St. Petersburg. So that tells you an awful lot about the man who wrestles alligators and bears and stuff like that. Yeah, he took off. He didn't want to hang around and be embarrassed any further than he had to be. With Putin, it's all about saving himself. And if there is going to be any blame, if anybody is going to have a finger pointed at them, it will not be him. It will be him pointing the finger at underlings. Putin's not the kind of guy that feels he looks good under the wheels of a bus, but he doesn't mind throwing other people there. So as a result, Prigozhin realizes that the gig's kind of up. He still has thousands of armed men within Russia that the Russians can't really do anything about, but he's sort of in a spot here. So Lukashenko brokers a deal whereby Prigozhin would be granted exile in Belarus. He would be allowed to be joined there by any of his Wagner soldiers that choose to follow him there. He will have to give up his equipment to the Russian military or the Ministry of Defense. And all charges that had been leveled against him by the Russian Security Service, the FSB, would be dropped. So essentially, the deal is from that side that Prigozhin rather will be given safe passage to Belarus, and Putin gave his personal assurance that no harm will visit Prigozhin while he is in Belarus. Yeah, right. Anyways, so we don't know what the flip side of this bargain is. We don't know what Prigozhin got out of it, except for the safe assurances of exile in Belarus, which doesn't sound really attractive to me, but where the hell's a guy like that going to go, right? Yeah, I mean, are Shoigu and Gerasimov going to be sacked? Is Putin going to humiliate himself by cashiering two of his most loyal lieutenants? Not that they're lieutenants, Gerasimov's a general, but like two of his most loyal cohorts, because that would be absolutely humiliating. And for last weekend, I would think that, Putin's not used to being embarrassed, much less humiliated. With the weekend that he's having, I don't really see him being too conducive to another continued humiliation here. But, and as far as I know, both those gentlemen are still in their jobs. But maybe Putin's sort of hanging back and waiting for a little bit of time to pass rather, before he gets rid of these guys. So that it looks like it had nothing to do with what Prigozhin demanded. Anyways, we're not terribly sure about what the other side of the deal is. So we'll have to keep our eyes on the status of Shoigu and Gerasimov, who in the past week have been videotaped sitting in a helicopter together, looking out the window and pointing out the window and nodding and all that kind of bullshit. Because those guys have no idea what the hell they're doing anyways, particularly Shoigu. It's all a complete sham. And we don't even know if that video was taken in the last week. That could have been taken last year, the year before last year. I mean, you never know. The Russians and the truth are two things that just really don't walk hand in hand, and they never have. So that's where we are right now. So the whole idea, you've got the Russians, they're in absolute tatters. Putin's reputation is, of course, badly damaged as a result of all of this. Shoigu and Gerasimov have, I guess what you can charitably say, as uncertain futures, and you can bet that the knives in the Kremlin, in the back rooms of the Kremlin, are being sharpened. Listen, guys like Shoigu, Gerasimov, maybe even Putin himself, Dmitry Peskov, Putin's spokesperson, the foreign minister Sergei Lavrov, the whole whack of them. It wouldn't be surprising if they're all dead within a year, and probably with Russians killing them. So things are rough. Now, meanwhile, Prigozhin in exile in Belarus, that's just nothing short of a complete joke. I mean, come on. Belarus, as I said, is almost part of Russia as it certainly stands right now. So honestly, I don't really care what assurances Putin may have given Prigozhin about his safety. Lying is a fact of life. I wouldn't trust that one iota. And I'm sure Prigozhin doesn't. So those assurances, they're not worth a flea-ridden bowl of borscht, in my opinion. Don't be surprised if Yevgeny Prigozhin mysteriously falls out of a fourth floor window or higher. Don't be surprised if the cigar he's smoking, I don't know if he smokes cigars, but if he does, don't be surprised if it explodes in his face. Don't be surprised if he falls grievously ill from ingesting some polonium-riddled food. Polonium being, of course, the radioactive poison of choice for Russian assassins. They've used it before. They'll use it again. That's what they used on Navalny. That's what they've used on other dissenters of the Russian regime. So, if I was Prigozhin, I would be watching my back, and I'm sure he is. And so if like I said, if I was him, which I'm really glad that I'm not, I would be investing heavily in a crackerjack security unit to protect me. The Russians have a long history of following people to other countries and assassinating them or killing them. It's what they do. It's what they do. And even that security detail may not be enough for Prigozhin. We got used to watching North American soap operas because they're on all the time and they're ubiquitous. They're always there. They always provide entertainment. But after a while, they kind of get a little long on the tooth. So, people started gravitating towards British soap operas. And of course, Coronation Street has a huge following here in Canada in particular. But now we've got the best. We've got the Red Square Blues, a Russian soap opera. And we can't get enough of that. I'm telling you, television has never been better. For Newsmag Renfrew, I'm Steve Jones. Slava Ukraini!